So needless to say, it's not news to anyone here that there is tension within the labor movement regarding climate change. Despite the friction and divisiveness this issue has brought about, I still think that most people realize that humanity and the planet come first. That there is a real crisis, people recognize there is a real crisis, and that there are ways to address this issue without workers having to lose their jobs. So that's why I invited Joe Uehlein here tonight to speak to us. He is, and shed some light on this issue. Joe there's quite a bio here, but he's the founding president and executive director of the Labor Network for Sustainability and Voices for a Sustainable Future. Joe is the former secretary-treasurer of the AFL-CIO's Industrial Union Department, of which we were chartered, and before they reorganized. And he was also former director of the strategic campaigns for the AFL-CIO. Joe spent over 30 years doing organizing, bargaining, and strategic campaign work in the labor movement. He's also served on many boards and committees. He served on the United Nations Commission on Global Warming from its inception in 1988 through the Kyoto Accords. And as I said, there are too many other boards he served on to mention. But he is also a member of the National Advisory Board of the Union of Concerned Scientists, and he served as a senior strategic advisor to the Blue-Green Alliance for 5 years. He's currently on the board of the U.S. Climate Action Network. He grew up in Lorain, Ohio, along the shores of Lake Erie, and he has worked. He started working many union jobs. He was a steel worker and a laborer. So he has worked heavy construction along the way, and he still serves as the advisory board on the advisory board of the Future of Music Coalition. He is a musician and may sing a song for us, we hope. And he's a member of the American Federation of Musicians. So let's give Joe a warm welcome.
Thank you, Carol. It's so great to be here. The Industrial Union Council of New Jersey has meant a lot to me over the years from my work in the industrial division of the AFL-CIO. I've been to your conventions over the years, and knew Archie Cole, and just there's all kind of history here. But the coolest thing about being here now is looking back over the years and feeling the common threads of art and activism that's so alive here in New Jersey through your work, and was central to us in the Industrial Union Department as well, especially me as a lifelong musician, and one of the founders of the Labor Heritage Foundation, which we housed in the industrial division for many years. This year, by the way, I celebrate my 50th year as a member of the AFM, the American Federation of Musicians, half a century. And I joined when I was 13 in Cleveland, Ohio. My first band in the 60s, I won't go into that, but I could. It would make a good story, but for another time, we don't have time tonight. I just released a new record that is titled Sweet Lorraine, for the city in Ohio where my story starts. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. So I'm really happy about that. And it's a concept album. It's a collection of new original songs that have something to say about the world around us. But as Carol mentioned, I did serve on the UN Commission on Global Warming from its inception in 1988, and served on it for, 17 years or so. And in 2005, I had become convinced and concerned that the labor movement wasn't stepping up to the plate on the issue of global warming. And I had done a lot within the movement about that, but the political constraints of the AFL-CIO, which I honor deeply, wouldn't allow for the kind of work I felt was needed on the issue. So I left the AFL-CIO after 35 years and formed this labor network for sustainability as a vehicle to work on global warming and climate change with unions and through a labor lens. Our tagline at the Labor Network for Sustainability, our one-sentence mission statement, is making a living on a living planet. And we focus on both those things with equal fervor. Family supporting jobs, good jobs, and a planet that is sustainable. And as Carol mentioned, that gets tricky within organized labor. And I knew when I left the AFL-CIO to do this work that it would, it would sever some relationships, that it would strain long-standing relationships, and that hurt. But it was just something that I felt was sort of my next phase in life, was to do this work full-time, working on climate change. So what we say to our environmental friends is that sustainability starts at the kitchen table. And we say that because, people always ask me, well, how is it that in Germany they could transition to solar the way they did, and that's running into some rough spots now, but how could they do that and do it with the support of the German labor movement, and we can't? And I answer my environmental friends, I said, well, it's simple. No worker in Germany has to worry about where their health care is coming from. No worker in Germany has to worry about where their pension's coming from. They don't have to worry about how they're going to pay for their kids' college education. It's free. They don't have to worry about vacations. It's public policy, minimum amount of vacation. So they have a just transition built into their social safety net, and we don't. And so our members are fearful every day of how they're going to meet all those various needs. So sustainability starts at the kitchen table. Let's address those issues, and then working people will be freed up to think more broadly about climate change and sustainability when that fear is removed. Now, I talk frequently about two Achilles heels, one of the environmental movement and one of the labor movement. The environmental movement's Achilles heel is that they've never really grasped the primacy of work in people's lives. And in the last 36 hours, I've been reading statement after statement from environmental leaders about the Trump election, and not one has mentioned what actually happened in the election the other night. Not one. And people who should know and should be able to address the working class issues that went a long way to getting Trump Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan and Wisconsin. It really bums me out that he kicked our ass with our own economic talking points. And it bums me out that the leaders of our climate and environmental movement don't seem to understand that. Now, labor's Achilles heel is equally acute, and it is that we have never found a way to adjust to changes in the economy. The economy grows away from us, and we circle the wagons around a shrinking base and don't go where that economy's going. And if you go up to the music studio in my attic, you'll pass a framed cover of the American Federation of Musicians magazine from like 1915. And it's got a guy holding the tuba, and he's lambasting the gramophone, saying, "Down with recorded music." That encapsulates our story. And when I speak to labor groups about this, people always come up to me afterwards and say, yeah, you know what, like CWA and IBEW folks say, yeah, we stuck with landlines too long. And look where that went. Or, yeah, I was in the printing industry and look what happened there. Or they just case after case after case of an economy growing away from us. And renewable energy is one of those examples. That train left the station about 15 years ago. And we're now, you know, playing catch up and we're working hard to, but we could have owned that. We could have owned that industry. So those are Achilles' heels. We need to help our environmental friends understand the primacy of work in people's lives. And we need to work within our movement to, one, address this issue of the economy, but more so of what climate change means to us. I didn't leave the AFL-CIO to work on climate change because I thought labor should be a good ally with its environmental partners. We should, but that's not what motivated me. It was because I saw climate change as a dagger pointed at our jobs. And that's what it is. It's a far bigger threat to our jobs than the answers to climate change. Far bigger. Yet we tend to focus on the answers as being a threat because there are going to be jobs lost. And we're right now in the midst of the greatest economic, technological, and ecological transition in our history. And it's true, a lot of jobs are going to be lost. Yet, we in labor have not fought for just transition programs. In fact, if you talk to some unions about it, they say you can't use that term. And you ask why, and they say, well, because it admits that jobs will be lost. Yeah, they are. And what I say back to labor people is to not fight for just transition is dereliction of duty. And I say that as someone who held a nationally elected office in the labor movement. So I feel some guilt there. I mean, my movement, our movement, and I don't say dereliction of duty lightly, but as I see the roadkill, our members as roadkill on the path to a renewable energy future, it pains me that those miners don't have just transition programs to fall back on. That the railroad workers moving the coal don't have just transition programs. And we could talk about a dozen major industries that are in transition right now with no guarantee that it'll be a just transition. You know, Trump's victory, and I'm not going to say much about this, I mean, it will mean that, you know, TPP's dead. So, it means that. We'll see. I believe it is. I believe that he meant what he said about it, and we're not going to have to deal with that. But I can't think of anything else good about it, and it really bothered me today when I watched the press conference. I mean, I know the president has to sit down and meet with them and offer them all this help, but you know, there he is, sitting next to a solipsistic, misogynistic, racist, xenophobe psychopath, saying we want to make him a successful president because then the country's successful. That pained me to hear that. Yeah. So I like the song and the resist, because that's what we got to do for the next, whatever, hopefully only 4 years. Technology, we all know, is going to also take jobs, and it's not just going to be the green technology. It's going to be everything from the driverless cars and how we make things in manufacturing. I just read a big article about Greenville, South Carolina, and the manufacturing resurgence there. And it's all high-tech, very few workers involved. Robots, yeah. That is definitely part of the scene there. But also, if we're gonna, just for an example, build wind power, and we are, that's gonna happen here. It's happening already in other countries around the world. It's gonna be a big part of our energy future. And the East Coast is gonna be part of that. It's starting in Rhode Island, big project off Long Island that's gonna be put in. We're trying to get it in Maryland. Wind companies are gonna come back here. And I say come back because there was a big factory outside of Philly, the old Fairless Works, that made windmills for a while. Gamesa was the Spanish company. They left because the demand wasn't there. Now, the labor movement wasn't fighting to build that demand at that time. So I consider us, I think we need to take a look in the mirror with an eye that's true. We didn't fight to keep those jobs because we weren't fighting to build demand for wind power. So what we have to do is fight to build the renewable energy future and create the jobs here. In other words, I don't want windmills coming from China. I don't want that. I don't want solar panels coming from China. There's now a big solar operation outside of Buffalo. We can do it here if labor gets in the lead of that train. Now what I say is, as a labor movement, it's in our self-interest to be a part of the movement to address global warming and a part of the movement to build a sustainable future for the planet and its people. And I'll give you a quick story. And are you keeping time on me? I hope somebody is, but somebody should be. Anyway, I was asked about 15 years ago to be a judge on a panel that was giving out sustainability awards to corporations for their sustainability reports. And these corporations were falling all over each other to get this award. Big ones, GM, Ford, Baxter International, Chiquita Brand Bananas, they wanted this award. And they had to fill out a sustainability form. Now, sustainability, most people think of it's green. It is, but it's not only green. Sustainability is environmental, social, and economic footprints of companies. And economic, that's where all our shop floor issues come into play, wages, unionization, all of that. Well, 17 of 22 companies that wanted this award didn't even fill out the economic section of the report. They didn't even fill it out. So I went to the judges panel, I said, this is easy. There's only 5 companies that qualify. And these are Harvard professors and religious leaders. And they all said, Joe, you don't understand. It's going to take these companies time to figure out how to fill out these forms. and that was my reaction. Because we're talking General Motors here, Ford. Come on. Ultimately, we only looked at the 5 companies, which was great. But my takeaway from that experience was that if we labor, if our movement doesn't find a way to become a central player in the movement to build a sustainable future, we're going to suffer as a result. And we need to find a way to do that. So when we set up the Labor Network for Sustainability, we set it up differently from the Blue-Green Alliance in 2 ways. The Blue-Green Alliance is a big coalition of labor and environmental organizations. And that coalition, any coalition, it kind of, brings your vision to a lowest common denominator that everyone can agree on. So they're not very aggressive on climate change. They do a lot of good things, but climate's not one of them. And so we decided at the Labor Network for Sustainability that we were going to keep, one, that we weren't going to be a coalition. We're a network of individuals. We have 7,000 members. The back page of your program is an ad that Carol gave us, and I appreciate that very much. You can join us. But what that meant was, so we don't take organizational affiliations, we take individual affiliations. So our vision stays pretty high, and we keep the timeline that science says we're on with regard to global warming front and center in our work. Now that is a luxury that I don't know any labor leader that can afford that luxury, to keep the timeline science says we're on with regard to global warming front and center in their work, because they've got grievances and contracts and all kinds of stuff every day, as you all know. So we said we would do that, and we would filter that through a labor lens and work with unions on the climate issue. It's going okay. Keystone Pipeline came along, and that was a big, big problem. I worked as a laborer, as Carol mentioned. Not only that, but I helped build the Texas Eastern Pipeline as it went through central Pennsylvania, the jurisdiction of my laborers local, 158. Yet I opposed the Keystone Pipeline and lost some friends over that. Right now, there's Standing with Standing Rock and the pipeline up there. And these pipelines don't only have climate impacts. With Keystone, there were impacts on ranchers, the Ogallala Aquifer. This one is sovereign territory for the First Nations in that area. And so there are issues beyond climate, although climate is certainly a big part of it as well. So we get involved in these issues and try to rally labor to stand up for something that's beyond the work site. And this gets to sort of the core of what the CIO was about. I was raised in a CIO family. My father was a founder of the Steelworkers and the CIO in Lorain, Ohio. And they always referred to CIO, which I'm sure some of us in this room know that it stands for Congress of Industrial Organizations, but they always referred to it as community in operation. And they had the buttons and stuff, you know, from the CIO days, community in operation, CIO. That was a belief of the CIO founders and the leaders. Walter Reuther gave a speech in the early 1960s in New York City where he said, the labor movement is about the problem on the shop floor that we fight for every day. But to make that the sole point misses the target. Because what good is an extra week's vacation we negotiate if the lake we take our kids to is polluted and they can't swim in it? What good is an extra $100 in pension that we negotiate if the world goes up in atomic smoke? And he would go on and link our shop floor gains to broader social issues. And so that vision was something we in the Industrial Union Department took very seriously. And so here I am today at the New Jersey IUC celebration, and I see that you all take it very seriously. And I gotta tell you, that warms my heart in a very fundamental way. So thank you for the work you do and for having me up here. And I am gonna close this little whatever remarks section with a song. It's track 1 on the new record. The title track, Sweet Lorraine, which tells my story, is track 2. Track number 1 is a song I wrote when I left the AFL-CIO to do this climate work, and all my friends said, you know, Joe, you're crazy. What are you doing? And they may be right. I think they were right about that. I mean, but what they followed that with was, you gotta go slow. Don't rock the boat. People aren't gonna like this climate stuff. So take it easy and go slow. And I thought, and I said, that's not why I can do that and stay in a good job if I want to do that. So I wrote this song called You Can't Giddy-Up by Sayin Whoa. And it's about all this. It's about the, you know, both the making a living on a living planet I talked about. Oh, you can't giddy up by saying whoa, ain't gonna get you where you wanna go. No time for moving slow, can't giddy up by saying whoa. Well, people always tell me you can't do things so fast. Take it slow, be real careful, can't upset the past. Well, I just don't know, don't see things quite that way. Best I can tell, we're about out of time. Here's what I've got to say. Oh, you can't giddy up by saying whoa, ain't gonna get you where you wanna go. No time for moving slow, can't giddy up by saying whoa. Well, you know we're dumping carbon in the atmosphere. It's warming the earth, messing with the oceans, climate change is here. We know what we got to do, leave it in the ground. Look to the sun, feel the wind, and listen to the sound. Oh, you can't giddy up by saying whoa, ain't gonna get you where you wanna go. No time for moving slow, can't giddy up by saying whoa. Well, the rich are getting richer all across the land. Poor getting poorer and the middle class is slammed. We know what we got to do to solve this one as well. Tax the rich, give the workers a raise, tell the bankers to go to hell. Oh, you can't giddy up by saying whoa, ain't gonna get you where you wanna go. No time for moving slow, can't giddy up by saying whoa. When all is said and done, we want more done than said. Seems like in this world of ours, you just can't get ahead. We bailed out those bankers real quick when they messed things up. The rest of us left holding the bag. For me, I've had enough. Oh, you can't giddy up by saying whoa, ain't gonna get you where you wanna go. No time for moving slow, can't giddy up by saying whoa. Thank you. It really meant a great deal to me for you to have me up here. And